Naeem, always a pleasure to talk to you. Can we begin with the news of the day, and that is being the latest on the COVID-19 vaccine front? I see that big moves are happening there on the FTSE as a result of the announcement that we could perhaps go to the new normal a lot sooner without perhaps wearing masks and observing that much social distancing as we're currently doing now. But just your take on the latest announcements from Pfizer and BioNTech.
Thanks for having me, Fifi, and it's always been a pleasure to be with you. So, I think the biggest take is pretty much reflected in the stock market because if you look at the Dow Jones, it is just incredible. The indexes, the futures were indicating earlier 1400, and now we went up all the way to 1500 points on the Dow Jones. So that just shows that how much enthusiasm is among investors on the back of this particular news. And Fifi, remember in our previous conversations we discussed about this that the news is imminent and that this is not the only candidate. We still have a Moderna which is also in the pipeline, and then that news is also be coming out very soon, perhaps not, if not this week, then the next week. So we have this enormous amount of a tailwind coming with respect to us going back towards the normal, the what we used to say. But I think speaking of normality, speaking of normal, it will not be, we're not going to get there that fast. I think that we still have to adopt to a new normal, and that means we still have to keep wearing the mask and the social distancing to a certain extent, at least until March of next year.
Oh.
So with respect to the new, with respect to the investor sentiment, and I think at AvaTrade we are immensely bullish on the back of this news, and our traders are just going pretty much long.
Yeah, and just looking at the action that is happening, because it seems like there's a rotation out of stocks that benefited from lockdowns, like your tech stocks and the healthcare stocks, and there's a rotation into the ones that got hit the hardest. Just looking at some of the counters on your end, the likes of EasyJet, the airlines rallying really strongly on this, Cineworld also rallying strongly on this. You've got pubs and restaurant stocks also up quite significantly, and even energy as a result of this announcement. So is that your play as well? Would you be advising clients at this stage to also be making that kind of rotation?
I concur with you. I think stock rotation is certainly here. And when we look at crude oil prices earlier, that was up nearly about 11% just on the back of this vaccine news. And earlier, we spoke in our notes to our clients, we talked about it, that look, the moment that this vaccine news will come out, what you wanted to do is you wanted to have a very clear idea in terms of your sector, hospitality sector, tourism sector, and of course, the energy sector. All of these sectors have been lagging over the period of time. And today, as you correctly pointed out, stocks like EasyJet, Ryanair, and various different TUI, which was one of the biggest company over in Europe, in Germany. All of these stocks are making mega moves. Just to give you a little bit color on Ryanair, that particular stock was down well over 30% not too long ago. Now the stock is positive for the year, but there are still opportunities for investors and traders because when you look at the performance for EasyJet, it is still down by nearly 50%. So there are just huge margins. Talk about Rolls-Royce. Rolls-Royce is still down by 50%. So if someone wants to own a Wraith, then perhaps that could be your pathway to own that because the stock is still down by 50%.
No, for sure. But I see, as you said, really rallying strongly. I mean, if the numbers I have in front of me are correct, apparently up 46%, if that's possible, in today's session alone, leading the charge. Naeem, another piece of information that, of course, investors are grappling with, perhaps some who at one point were confused as to who would win the US presidential race, because it was neck and neck at one point where it was really difficult for most people to call. But now we seem to have a lot more clarity on how that outcome is. And I'm just interested in whether you will be making any significant reshuffling to your portfolio as a result of what the political landscape in the US now looks like.
For sure. Look, I mean, earlier today, when we started the day in Europe at 5 a.m., we were looking at these rumors in the market where possibly the upcoming subsidies or the taxes in the US, which were going to be from Germany, from the EU side, or from Germany specifically, 4 billion, that are likely to be delayed. So that is the pretty much message. The message now is in terms of a portfolio allocation, focus more on bridges rather than on walls, because that is what this new policy is going to be geared on. Because as we move forward, I think Biden and the Biden administration is going to look to build bridges with the European allies. And of course, the relationship isn't going to turn that quickly with respect to China. Yes, there are headlines out there which are still saying that Biden is still going to take a tougher stance towards China, but we don't believe that. We think that it is going to be pretty much a relationship pretty similar, but not exactly the same what under the Obama administration was. So don't expect a complete U-turn with respect to Biden presidency if you are playing with on that perspective, because he's not going to change his narrative altogether when it comes to China. But yes, his relationship, the foreign policy of the US, the dominance of the dollar, that will significantly change. And that's where the play is. So if you are looking in terms of those relationships, that the opportunity is within that space.
So building bridges rather than walls, a really nice statement there, an imagery that it of course it conjures, but how or what do you think the ramifications of a Biden presidency that is seen as more harmonic? I mean, he has spoken about the first thing he's looking to do is unite the US a lot more and naturally unite or make trade relations and trade talks a lot more or a lot less. The word I'm looking for does escape me at this moment, but the question that I actually wanted to ask is, what is that narrative? Are there any ramifications for Brexit and how you guys deal with the possibility of building bridges there, and then what that means for money in the UK?
Yeah, I think the word Brexit still chokes me off whenever I think about it, because obviously we've spoken in great length about it. So when it comes to Brexit, this is quite an intriguing point that you've mentioned. So I think Biden administration has come to terms that look, Brexit has happened, and that we have to move forward with it. But I do not necessarily think that the UK will get the same sort of treatment which possibly could have under Trump administration, because Trump was very much on the dictatorship of this Brexit, right? So he orchestrated the entire relationship and how this Brexit happened. Biden was very much on the other side. So with that respect, I don't think the relationship is going to be that much harmonious, despite the fact that Boris Johnson came out pretty quickly and then congratulated Biden when for being the president-elect for the United States. But the situation, I do not necessarily think is going to be the same what it could have been under Trump administration for the
Right.
time being. But I think one particular element that I just finally wanted to touch on that is, for investors and traders, what is quite important is to get lost with the message that we are seeing today. Yes, vaccine news is out there. Yes, vaccine is the circuit breaker that we were all looking for. But the fact is that the coronavirus cases are still rising in the United States. We are looking at some very small and a very smaller scale. Some restrictive measures are being carried out in New York. And I think we're going to hear more of that over the coming weeks. So there is a retracement. So don't get confused. Don't get completely panicked. If there is when the retracement is around the corner, and when that will come, that could be an opportunity to get involved in.